companies wanted to use this ingredient, not necessarily in entirely animal-free products, but to start to move their portfolio or their product lines in the direction, right?
To reduce their reliance on animal-derived.
Exactly. We've now today achieved more than 5 times, probably 10 times what people thought was possible. Experts in the field thought was possible 10 years ago.
Because even today, you'll still get people saying, it's just not commercially viable to make particularly casein proteins, but even, people saying that about whey. I guess you would beg to differ.
I would beg to differ. In fact, our entire business model is predicated on differing with that. I think the way that I think about it, that I think is, look, I mean, as a founder, I have to think in the most kind of long-term and abstract way. And the way that I look at this is we're using the upstream technology of the enzyme industry, and we're using the downstream technology of the dairy industry, because the dairy industry already basically is purifying protein out of milk from the perspective of, if you're getting whey protein isolate, right? You're filtering and drying. So the sum of those two costs is the floor of our eventual cost, if that makes sense. And it's dramatically lower cost than dairy right now.
Hey everyone, one of you was asking about Perfect Day a number of weeks ago. Well, their founders are stepping down and they're now looking for a new CEO. They have an interim CEO. They're raising a Series E, and within a few weeks they're teasing a partnership with a launch by a large CPG company and some new proteins that they've been working on. So there's going to be a lot of, here's Perfect Day as a company not going to be doing well because their founder's leaving, or is this just another shift in the company and we're going to have new products? We're going to have a company that looks slightly different. Good interview coming up by Elaine Watson with Egg Thunder News. Of course, the original is in the description. I'm just going to take a couple of clips from that and provide a bit of context on where the company is and where I believe it is going.
So over the years then, you've made those, people always talk about productivity, tighter and yield. You've made significant progress on all those fronts then in the last almost a decade.
Absolutely. And that's why we have companies approaching us to work with our technology and our platform. And quite frankly, that's why we've set up EnthBio, to be able to leverage what we've built to do more than just our own pipeline. Because I think, I know we'll get into all of this, but I think the market and the conditions right now, but also in general, sort of demands, I think, focus and a well-defined kind of, focus area for any given company, right? So for us, that means we've built this incredibly capable, very versatile platform, but there's only so many things that we're going to end up commercializing because that's our focus.
Yes.
And yet we know that there are so many different companies that have started that are younger than us, that are making maybe different proteins or targeting different things that would benefit from our platform. And so we've found the best of both worlds to be able to do what we do and leverage what we've built for other companies.
So talk about focus then. So in terms of whether you're a B2B company, B2C and so on. So when you started, I remember seeing pictures of you, holding up animal-free, a mock-up of an animal-free milk or something like that. And, you always were looking at sort of consumer products, and then you kind of focused in on B2B, and then you set up this consumer products arm, the Urgent company, which now you're kind of sort of phasing out. So can you talk a bit about that journey? And a lot of startups obviously face this. Do you do B2B, B2C? Talk about, your model, I guess.
Yeah, of course. When we started, to your point, I was right out of college. I didn't necessarily know very much about the industry of dairy or food or ingredients or biotech or really any of these things. So we had the assumption at the very beginning that we would build it like Impossible, for example. Like you build the technology, you make a product, you put the product on the market.
Yeah.
And very quickly, we started realizing that we were getting a lot of inbound inquiries from industry, from companies that were saying, hey, I buy whey protein, or I buy casein, or I buy milk ingredients. Can you sell it to me, right? Like I would love to have an animal-free version or a lactose-free version, or all the benefits that this protein brings to the world. Can you sell it to us? And as we started looking into it more, as we started hiring people from the dairy industry and from food ingredients, we realized, oh, this is actually how dairy works. Dairy is fundamentally about taking this raw input of milk and turning it into all these different things, not only the things that you and I might think of, like cheese, yogurt, ice cream, but actually fractionating it into the different components and turning those into ingredient markets. That's what dairy is. And we had then, and we have now, the ability to make each of these things already in their sort of pure form without any of the other, in some ways, impurities, right? For example, if you want a lactose-free milk protein, you can't really get all the way lactose-free. There's always going to be a little bit. But if you're making it through fermentation, you can actually accomplish that. So we quickly realized that B2B was actually not only the way to check all these boxes with the demand that we were seeing, but a way stronger business model and a way more flexible approach, because brands come and go, trends come and go, but the fundamental ingredients that drive food innovation within food companies is limited by what ingredients are available to them. So why would we want to be the only company out there doing it? We should really enable everyone else in the food industry to use these ingredients. So in 2016, we decided to shift formally to a B2B model. Now, what changed is over the following 4 years, we started to build our technology more. We were starting to talk to food companies, and we realized these are large companies that move kind of slowly. And we kind of wanted to show them by the time we were ready in 2019, 2020. You might know in 2019, we ended up doing a kind of soft launch.
Ice cream products.
Yeah. We did 10,000 ice creams and a little truck in LA and stuff. But we wanted to actually go a little bit further. And what really happened is we met with a distributor in California who tried our ice cream in an unmarked white pint, and they loved it. It's an incredible product, and they loved it. And they were like, I couldn't tell that this isn't dairy, like cow-based ice cream. Can we start distributing this for you? And we're like, well, we're B2B. We don't actually sell this yet. But we would be happy to connect you with our customers, right? And they go, just give it to us. Like, it doesn't matter. Call it whatever you want. Just put a name on it. Give it to us. We'll distribute it throughout California. We'll get it going. And we're driving home from that meeting, and we're like, why don't we do that, right? Why don't we just give it a name, push it out there? Because we could move so much faster than any of our customers by virtue of being a startup, by virtue of being intimately familiar with this ingredient. We already had the formulation, we had the recipe down, we had the, commands, all of it figured out. So we did. And from there, we started thinking about it a little bit differently. We're like, why don't we turn this into its own entity and actually try to prove not only that you can make products that were ready, that the ingredients ready, but that you can actually build a good business out of this. And what we were really hoping to do was prove to the big companies that really drive impact that this was ready for prime time. What I think we maybe didn't anticipate when we started it was how we would feel when that box was checked. So
you created the Brave Robot brand, some other brands, and then you also acquired the Cool House brand. That's right. As well, and then more recently, you're sort of moving back to a B2B model. I mean, to people that say, did it make sense to buy Cool House only to sell it again? How do you respond to those questions? Yeah.
So I think what I was about to get to as well is what we were trying to do was show this model of, fermentation-derived dairy and fermentation-derived protein is fully ready to go into stores, to go into consumers, and people are ready for it. Now, Cool House is a little bit different. I'll get to that in a second. But overall, we accomplished the mission to such an extent that we didn't feel the need to run consumer brands anymore, quite frankly, because we started having pretty much every Fortune 500 food and beverage and dairy company working with our ingredients, launching things. Now, typically they've launched kind of small things to start, but I think, and I know we'll get into that as well, but what we know behind the scenes and what I can't kind of share too much more detail on is that these are all leading towards much larger launches and much larger kind of parts of their portfolios.
Yes.
And so we don't have to do this consumer brand thing anymore.
Yes.
To the same extent. And as we think about, our resources, our focus, why would we dilute our focus if we don't need to, or if it's not driving sort of goals, right? Now, Cool House is interesting because what we wanted to show there was, can you take a brand that has been operating for a decade and has been selling traditional dairy? They also had some plant-based products, but you had kind of both paradigms, right? A small plant-based part of the pie and a majority that's dairy. And the question was, can you take an established brand with an established audience and turn it over to animal-free? How does that go? Because we really, that's what we really want our customers to be doing, and what I think will really drive the impact that we're motivated by and that our customers are motivated by. It's one thing to launch a product from scratch that's in the animal-free category and see how that does. But that's not what we want. That's not even what the large companies want. We all want to see the supply chain that drives the large part of the pie move into a more sustainable paradigm. We did that with Cool House. And I think that was a really useful data point for us and for the industry.
Many people, I think, will look at this news and say, well, I don't really believe the CEO because I can't buy animal-free dairy Cool House ice cream, which of course is now owned by another company. But if you are living in Singapore or you're living in Hong Kong, all of the Cool House ice cream there is already 100% animal-free dairy. And in Hong Kong, it's been that way for about 6 months. No, sorry. It's been that way for almost a year. In Singapore, it's been that way for over a year now.
Now that it has kind of proven its point, we're shifting into being able to do that with customers that have dramatically more scale and impact than we could ever build from scratch. Just is the reality of how long it takes to build things, and it's not. Let me put it this way: it's not our goal to try to build things that chip away at other people's market. That's not the goal here. We actually want the players that are in the market to continue being in the market, and we want to help them, right? When we talk to Starbucks, I don't know if you know, they're the largest dairy buyer in the country, in the United States. There are functionalities and product, abilities that you can do with products that are kind of possible today with dairy, but are really possible when you start to make it through fermentation. So the level of purity that we can achieve is higher than you can get with dairy. The level of sort of functional flexibility. So let me give you an example. Right now, if you want to have a high protein beverage that is like a recovery drink right after a workout, maybe you've had some of these. There are these like high protein waters that are pretty much always really, really acidic, and they have a little bit of a cheesy flavor. This is just one example. Our protein is able to do this at a neutral pH, meaning it's not acidic. It doesn't have to be like a lemon lime or whatever kind of flavor. You could have, and we've made this, like a coconut water or like a really mild flavored but super high protein drink. Now, I don't know the size of that market, but it's there. And what's interesting about it is that you couldn't do this with whey protein from dairy. You have to do it through fermentation to be able to make that product. And there are numerous other kinds of things like this that are unlocked by being able to do this. So new functionalities and quite frankly, more I think predictable pricing than you can get with the animal supply chain as well.
I mean, you're already at the Series D stage. I mean, what happens next?
Well, E.
But I mean, can you carry on just kind of raising more money? I mean, what's the end game?
No, and I think that's the point, right? Like we really want to get off the need for venture, which I think is a healthy mindset, right? And if any venture investor would say, ideally you get off the treadmill at some point. And so the way that we've always viewed it is that we're trying to build a company that could exist as a really strong public company. And the rationale there is whether the end game, and I think, for startups in general, whether the end game is public or whether the end game is an acquisition, you're best served by building a great business. right? Because it's better for an acquiring company. It's better if you're public. It's better for shareholders. That's what we're trying to do. And of course, we're not quite there yet. So we will probably end up raising, and we'll talk to you about it when we do our next round. We're very close to that sort of finish line that I think is the goal for any startup.
So I want to talk just briefly about how do you talk to consumers about what you're doing? I know we've discussed this over the years. Do we talk about microflora? Do we talk about animal-free dairy? Do we talk about whey protein from fermentation? Can you talk a bit about briefly how that's kind of evolved and what you think is the best way to communicate this to consumers?
Yeah, so we started off describing it as animal-free. And, again, for that sort of smaller part of the pie, I think that's correct and it's right. And a lot of people really want that. But the reality is the overall impact that could be achieved here isn't necessarily in products that are entirely animal-free. And I think that was a huge learning for us. That, again, like when we went from assuming we'd be a consumer brand to B2B in 2016, realizing that companies wanted to use this ingredient not necessarily in entirely animal-free products, but to start to move their portfolio or their product lines in the direction, right?
To reduce their reliance on animal-derived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that is it's a sliding scale, because like positive impact and positive environmental benefits and these kinds of things don't have to be all or nothing. And in fact, it doesn't help anyone for us to expect it to be all or nothing, right? These are incremental. Society is incrementally getting better, and we want to help that and push that. So instead, what we have found is if we talk about it as what it is, which is whey protein from fermentation, it accomplishes two things. First of all, it gives us that flexibility and our customers that flexibility. And secondly, it plays up what I think people already have familiarity with. People know what whey protein is. It's the gold standard, highest quality nutrition out there right now and functionality out there. And fermentation is known to be, a really nice technology that converts things into more complex or more nutritious forms, right? Broadly. And so combining those two concepts, you get, I think, a really accurate depiction of what this is, which is important on a label, and that flexibility.
So, as we can see from her latest report, which came out today, they are finalizing a pre-Series E round of up to $90 million. Keep watching the company. They will IPO. It's a matter of time. Clearly, they're not ready yet. Maybe another year or two. I'm super excited to see what partnership gets announced. I'm really hoping it's one that's more widely available and not just a few Costco's in California, at least in the US. Hopefully it's not just Singapore and Hong Kong, because it would be nice to see this partnership be more substantial so that people start waking up to what's happening. Thanks for watching as always. We'll catch you in the next video.